If you are a wife to a man of God and all of a sudden, one child you guys have, the man starts talking about killing the child, what would you do? Will you support that? Would you report him to the authority? What would you do? I mean, after the whole years of barrenness, you are testing me for what? On today's edition, I'm going to talk about the story of Abraham and his son. We know how Bible stories are. They just cut and join the places they need us to see or to hear, and then allow us to keep wondering about the rest of the stories. When they explain these things on the altar, it sounds so sweet to the ears, but when you actually have to relate with it, put yourself in the story, you will understand how sometimes these stories don't make sense. Why would God tell Abraham to kill his son, the promised child? For whatever reason, Jewish religion said it's because of obedience. It tests Abraham's obedience to God. We know that Jewish religion is about law and principles. So also the Islam think it's about obedience too, even though they don't believe it's Isaac. They said it's Ishmael that was about to be killed because Islam tilted somehow to Ishmael more than to Isaac. Early Christians think the story is about faith, the faith of Abraham in God, and then recent Christians think it's about tests. But whatever, God is all knowing. And then Abraham having faith in God that even though he gave him this only child and still wants to kill the child, that he's all knowing. He can resurrect the child or even give him more. Fine. But the life is involved. And then about tests, why would God test Abraham? God is supposed to be all knowing. And if you are an all knowing God, you should be able to tell what a person can do. You know Abraham quite well if he was going to obey or disobey. So why the need for the test? Where was Sarah in this whole thing? Did God tell her? Was God trying to punish her for banishing Hagar? We know the story of Hagar and Ishmael. Hagar was a slave in their house. When Sarah thought she was too old to have a child of her own, he made the maid to sleep with Abraham. Eventually, when she became jealous and saw that Abraham was giving them a lot of attention, she banished her. We know the rest of the story. Even if you don't, you can go and read it up, right? This story is found in Genesis chapter 21. Now, was God trying to teach Sarah a lesson? What kind of lesson? The other part, was Sarah really aware of this whole plan God had with Abraham? Because if she knew, I mean, after the whole years of barrenness, you're testing, what are you talking about? So, did Sarah know? Or did they hide it from her? Was God trying to replace animal sacrifice with human sacrifice? Or was he trying to replace human sacrifice with animal sacrifice? Because animal sacrifice continued after that incident. I wouldn't know. He killed his own son, Jesus Christ. So, what was that about the sacrifice issue? Then, apart from that, where was Isaac after this whole thing? Nobody told us about Isaac's childhood because a normal child will become rebellious, will try to report to the authorities, for example, will become angry at his father and even scared or even want to retaliate and all of that. So, what happened afterwards? Let's bring it down to our time. Imagine that you are a pastor and all of a sudden you were caught trying to kill your son. Then whoever it is that walked in on you heard you saying God said. I mean, God said, Jesus said, Holy Spirit said. We hear people say this all the time. And at the end of the day, it turns out that the thing they said or they claimed Jesus said to them didn't come to fulfillment. And now, if you walk in on a man of God, or if you hear that a man of God was trying to kill his son, the first thing that you will think about is ritual. What was he trying to use his son for? And of course, that was what it was for Abraham. Sacrifice, right? He was going to sacrifice it to God. Will the person not rot in jail? Like, will he not be apprehended and sentenced to prison? If you are a wife to a man of God and all of a sudden, one child you guys have, the man starts talking about killing the child, what would you do? Will you support that? Would you report him to the authority? What would you do if you were in Sarah's position? And if you were Isaac, after your father has tried to remove your life, what would you do? Would you still trust him? Would you still be under his protection? Would you run away? Do you know that Sarah died in the next chapter, chapter 23? Did she die of heartbreak? Did she die of heart attack? What suddenly killed her? Was that child not left in trauma? Put yourself in Isaac's shoe. Your father nearly killed you for whatever reason. Most of the Bible stories are illustrative stories. They never happened. But this story of Abraham and Isaac and the instruction from God was one of the stories that Bible scholars believe that it happened. It was a real story. The story to me is very, very incomplete. Was God trying to show Abraham who the boss was? Because we remember previously, Abraham was pleading, not really arguing with God about Sodom and Gomorrah, why would he destroy so the good with the good people with the bad people, and was saying, if we have 100 people, would you spare Sodom? And God said yes. He reduced, if we have 50, if we have 40, if we have 30, if we have 10. So that's haggling between Abraham and God. Maybe made God felt in a certain way that he needed to show Abraham who the boss was, and gave that instruction of him killing his son and everything. What do you guys think? When you are studying the Bible, you need to open your heart, your mind, your brain, your every sense, to all the possibilities, and listen to everything that the Holy Spirit is going to, minister to you, or whatever possible understanding that could be sieved out of that story. What are the missing links? What are the missing details? If you are bringing this story to our modern time, how possible do you think this is? How would you react if you were Sarah, or if you were Isaac? Why did the Bible not tell us anything about Isaac afterwards? What happened? What killed Sarah in the next chapter? Did she die of heartbreak? If God is all knowing, why would he need to test Abraham when he already knows that he would obey him? Why this whole thing? You know, why? Till then, Abraham had been very obedient and faithful. Why the need for all of this drama? What kind of faith was Abraham trying to to demonstrate? There are things that are, that they are even an offense, not just to God, but to humanity. One of them is killing. There are rules even about how to slaughter animals and to eat, not to talk of killing a human being. And then all of a sudden, God told you to kill, not just to kill your enemy, but to kill your son. Didn't you question that? The Bible didn't tell us anything about the doubts Abraham had, the struggles he had. The Bible just told us how he made up his mind and carried his son and carried the wood and we also know that there were discussions along the way. Isaac asking him, Daddy, this is the knife, this is the wood, where is the animal for sacrifice and all of that. At least, for the sake of the fact that these stories are made for human beings, there should have been some elements of feelings, or telling us about the things Abraham thought about. Did he ever feel like he wouldn't do this, or tried going back and changing his mind and all of that and all of that? So that story to me was too straightforward to be digested and just accepted by any right thinking person. What do you guys think about this? I need your opinion. This will not change the Bible story. The Bible is not changing. We are still using the same Bible. We are still hearing the same story. We are still being taught with it. So, but then, guys, how do you relate to this kind of story? Each time you hear it and you are making mental pictures of what really transpired, because like I always say, the way up is down, the way down is up. The story will not make sense to me if I cannot relate to it. If I am not able to see myself in the story, or change the story in a way that it will involve me. There is no way to understand it. I mean, as a father, as a mother, as a wife, as a child, how would you relate to this story? See you guys on the next one. Remember that I'm not representing any religious group. I am only bringing out these stories in a very neutral way. Nobody is mocking God, nobody is mocking any religion, nobody is mocking the Bible. Okay? We are just trying to understand some Bible stories and bring it to reality, because some of these stories are becoming very obsolete and very difficult to relate with. So, my name is Vivian, and see you on the next controversial story.